You've got love for start-stop technology where maybe we don't. We help one of you find a thrifty techy SUV, and we try to find out the truth behind ECU tuning for power. This is CNET Roadside Assistance, episode number 48. For March 15th, 2012. This is the show where we basically take a look at your questions and comments and try to get you some answers and that sort of thing. I'm Antoine Goodwin alongside Wayne Cunningham with Mitchell Chang at the control chiming in occasionally. So let's jump right into the emails because I think this first one's actually pretty interesting. This comes in from Thomas. He says, "Hi guys, I'm in the market for a new or used 7-passenger SUV in the next few months. Now, originally I was thinking a 3 or 4 year old Audi Q7 or Cadillac Escalade, but the atrocious gas mileage I've been reading about for both vehicles makes me wonder if spending a little bit more on a new Ford Explorer or Dodge Durango would be better. I was hoping to be closer to $30K than $40K in price, but I really want a lot of tech in this vehicle, and the better gas mileage would be nice, as I plan to own it for 6 to 8 years. Any suggestions?"
Yeah, 7-passenger SUV. So that puts it in a very defined segment, and good gas mileage is not a marker of that segment.
Not really.
But he is mentioning the Ford Explorer, and so the Ford Explorer with the V6, they're saying 28 miles per gallon, which is way better. I mean, yeah, the Escalade from a few years ago, that's, you're looking at 15 to 20.
Right.
Or less even, I think.
And what's the fuel economy on the Escalade? You can get that with the EcoBoost, right?
Or the Explorer? I think so.
The Explorer is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, they've got, just right on the top of their site, they've got the V6 listed with for under 30,000 actually. Although throw some tech in there, it's going to throw it over 30. So this is fitting all Thomas's requirements right away. And they've got the updated MyFord Touch system too, so that's good. I'm just trying to, they do have the EcoBoost engine as well. Will be available. That one will probably cost a little bit more. Well, let's just check that out here. So this is actually a 4-cylinder engine, and I don't think we've tested this. The Explorer with the EcoBoost engine, but
we did test the
Edge.
What is the other one? The Flex with the EcoBoost.
Right.
And I think it wouldn't be that much different in performance. I think the weight of those vehicles would be about the same.
You know what? That Flex actually wasn't the 4-cylinder EcoBoost.
It wasn't. It was the 6-cylinder.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was powerful. That was fast. Actually, that's the same engine they use in the Taurus Show. In the Explorer, they're talking about doing the 4-cylinder EcoBoost,
which may not be enough power for that car.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that because we did try it out in the Edge, which is a smaller vehicle, and I think it was good in that car.
And I'm wondering for the deficit of power, like, are you really getting that much better fuel economy out of the Turbo 4? Because I've heard reports that it doesn't actually do very well as far as like really being a significant jump in fuel economy for the additional price tech and power loss.
Yeah. One thing to note, too, is if you do get the EcoBoost engine, you only get front-wheel drive. You don't get four-wheel drive. So if four-wheel drive is a consideration, then you'll definitely want be looking at probably an Explorer with the V6. Which I think that power is adequate in there. It's not super powerful, but it's enough to get you around. But other options, too, not just sticking with Ford here. I was also trying to think of other sort of economical 7-passenger vehicles.
First one that jumps to my mind is the Highlander Hybrid.
Yeah,
that's going to be closer to 40, though. I mean, I think to get started on that one, I'm seeing on Toyota's site about 38.5. So it's at the top end of what your price range is. But, I mean, it's a hybrid. It gets 28, combined 28.
Yeah, you can pretty much reliably get close to 30 miles per gallon with that.
Right, and it's seat 7 with the third row fold flat seat, 4-wheel drive. It's basically a Lexus RX with an extra row of seats, and I think I really like the new Lexus RX Hybrid and the way that it handles its all-wheel drive, and the way that it actually handles as a vehicle.
Can you get that? Is that the price for the Highlander with a 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive?
That's the hybrid. The hybrid is 4-wheel drive.
Oh, just standard.
It just is.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they use an electric motor on the rear axle.
Right.
For fake all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Well, it's real all-wheel drive, but there's no drive shaft.
Another option I was thinking of was actually the Honda Pilot, which is also a 7-passenger, and that's Honda's V6 in that. So, it's just a straight V6 like the Explorer. You don't, and it's pretty decent power from that engine. I think it's probably about 260 or so horsepower. They've been making that forever.
Yep. It's the same 3.5 V6. They pretty much toss in anything that needs a V6.
Yeah. Fuel economy on that, I think you'd probably be looking at low 20s with as big a vehicle as the Pilot.
But I think we tested that vehicle like 2 years ago, and I'm fairly certain it hasn't changed significantly since then. So dig up our CNET review on that, and I'm sure my opinion today is the same as it was then.
With the Cadillac Escalade, there is a hybrid version of that car, and that'll get you about 20 miles per gallon.
Was it like $100,000?
Yeah, it was expensive, and finding, I think finding a used one will it'll still be pretty pricey. It's a really nice car to drive around.
What was that like Chevy hybrid that they made for like a year? Was it like a Tahoe hybrid?
I think you're thinking of the Dodge had the Durango hybrid for about a year.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah, they pretty much canceled it, after they got 2 of them on the lot. That was very short-lived, and that's of course when they're going through all the financial problems too, which is why they cut it. We'll see what happens now that they're owned by Fiat. Maybe they'll bring something like that back. Now I'm just trying to think if there's any other. 7-passenger vehicles. There's
minivans.
Yeah,
you can start getting into we can start talking Siennas and.
I don't think Thomas. I don't think Thomas wants to go there.
I don't see why not.
He did mention Audi Q7. I'm trying to think what engine is in the Q7. It's if it was the 3.2 liter V6 that Audi's had around for a long, that's actually a really good engine. But I kind of don't think. I think they got something bigger in the Q7. Just look this up really quickly here. And they win awards. Q7. Oh, you can get the diesel Q7.
I'm sure that's going to be above the 40K cap.
Yeah, Audi's a premium brand, and these are definitely going to be pricey. Although it's interesting. Touareg is there's a 7-passenger Touareg, VW Touareg, and you could look for that in diesel.
Yeah. The thing, though, I think that he's also asking for is a lot of tech, and as these vehicles go, the Escalade probably not going to have the best cabin tech package as far as like having an older generation Cadillac system.
Yeah, it's decent, but it's not really cutting edge. It's a solid system, but anytime you're looking at a used vehicle, and the tech has changed so rapidly in the past.
And when you're looking at a used vehicle, you're kind of looking for a vehicle that already has that in it. You can't go and say, I want a used this with this in it. You have to kind of find the vehicle that has that tech package in it. So it's a little bit harder to spec the tech that you want when you're going used.
That's true. I'm thinking just from looking at all the stuff here. And by the way, the Q7 was, what did they say the price on that? The base price is $46. So it's pretty far over. That's not sure that's TDI or not, but anyway, base price $46, so it's kind of pricey. I'm thinking the best option around here looks like the Ford Explorer with the V6.
I'm thinking Highlander hybrid.
Yeah,
yeah. I think that the fuel economy you'll get from the hybrid is probably worth the couple extra bucks that you'll pay for the luxury of having a hybrid vehicle. But I think as fuel gets more expensive, it'll start balancing out in the long run, especially if you're keeping it for 6 or 8 years.
That makes sense, but where I would say maybe lean towards the Ford is the cabin tech is going to be a little bit better in the Ford. I don't think they have Toyota in tune for the Highlander yet.
They don't have in tune, but they got Bluetooth.
Yeah,
they've got iPod connectivity, and depending on what is being what Thomas is looking for, maybe that's just what he wants is really good tech. I want navigation with traffic and to be able to plug my iPod up.
Yeah, they do cover your basics there. It may not be the most cutting edge, but they cover all the really things that we consider the really necessary, cabin technology pieces. So, yeah, and also, I think the fact that the Toyota has all-wheel drive standard, that, may tip the scales that way too. I'm not sure where Thomas lives here. I don't think he gave us a location.
Nope. nothing like that.
But anyway, so I think it boils down to probably the Ford Explorer or the Toyota Highlander hybrid.
Yep, I think it just really depends on if you're going new, then it's pretty. It really depends on how much you want to spend. If you're going used, then I think we gave him a lot of good choices to kind of expand his field of what he's looking for, and then of course just test drive the vehicle.
Yeah,
make
absolutely.
sure you can live with it.
And yeah, as a dark horse, maybe the VW Touareg diesel might be something to look for in the used market.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got another question here from Victor in Pasadena. He says, I often see the misconception about the hydrogen added into the fuel system as being used or intended to be used as fuel. Of course, it won't work as fuel since it would become a perpetual motion mobile. I think hydrogen was intended as a catalyst to help burn gasoline that is not burned. Think of this, adding direct injection to an existing gas engine adds about 30% more power, approximately. He's just throwing a number out there. Adding hydrogen to the mix is trying to do the same thing to help ignite the previously unburned gas. He says, I haven't tried this or plan to, but I just wanted to dispel the notion that hydrogen was intended as added fuel. So this is talking about the idea of putting a system in a car that will electrolyze or use the the electricity generated by the engine to do electrolysis on the water on a tank of water,
Mm-hmm.
splitting the hydrogen and oxygen and running the hydrogen into the fuel stream. And it's a good point that Victor is making here, is that instead of having the hydrogen burn and cause combustion in the chamber, the idea is that it will actually cause the gasoline, cause all of the gasoline, or help all the gasoline burn. Because this is inefficiency, is when you leave gasoline unburnt in the cylinder.
Yeah, I mean, it's inefficiency in that you're not extracting as much energy, so you're having to use more gas to get the same amount of energy. Also, it hurts your emissions because the unburned gasoline coming out of the exhaust pipe is probably it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Long story short. Again, I'm not 100% sure on the science behind that or how it works. I'm more of a mechanical engineering guy, less of a chemical engineering guy.
Yeah. I mean, when you do ignite the hydrogen, it'll certainly, cause additional combustion in the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
What I intend to do, actually, I'm sure on the web somebody's tested the system out and probably found that it doesn't really add much. And I would just say just the idea of, filling up your water tank and adding however many gallons of water you need to, run hydrogen in the fuel stream, that could, maybe a very little bit, or it could be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how much hydrogen you're going to get out of electrolysis, because electrolysis is a fairly, or electrolyzing water is a fairly, gives you a thin stream of hydrogen. So I don't know not sure how much you're really going to add into the system.
Yeah, the efficiency, the percentage of efficiency it'd have to be pretty high to justify the energy loss in actually creating the hydrogen in the first place.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a supercharger where you bolt a supercharger onto your engine, and now a percentage of the torque generated by the engine is being diverted to actually spinning the compressor on the supercharger. Fortunately, it's so efficient that you usually get more power out of the system than you put in, just by on the account of how it works. But I mean, again, if you're doing this with hydrogen, you're going to have to put some energy into the electrolysis of that water in order to get something out. And if the amount of energy you're putting in is less than the amount of energy you're getting out, probably just best not to deal with it. And again, I don't have numbers on either of those, but it's interesting to see this other sort of perspective on it.
Yeah, how it might work to actually cause a better fuel burn, and that might add some percent. Direct injection. I don't think direct injection really adds 30% efficiency. It certainly, you get a lot more. I mean, it's
more precise.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty brilliant stuff. I mean, you do get, we see new engines coming out with direct injection, and they get more horsepower and better fuel economy over there, over the equivalents. But I usually see numbers cited of gains of like maybe 10% or so, 10 to 15%.
10's good.
Yeah, I mean,
10 is very good.
Yeah, nothing to scoff at. That's for sure.
All right. We got another email coming in that says, we don't have a name on this one, but it says, "Hi, I saw your piece on CarTech and CarTech Live about the BMW 328i. That was week before last, just before we went to Geneva." And it says, "And the rant against the auto start stop function. I drive the 118D, which we don't actually get here in the United States. And it has the auto start-stop function, but with a manual transmission. He thinks this configuration is more suited for auto start-stop because when the car stops, he's in neutral and depresses the clutch. And it starts right up when he puts the clutch back in. And it takes time for the engine to restart, but then he also has to put the transmission in gear and can't drive away immediately, so he's not really hurried. He says, indeed, if you feel your engine restarting, even more so with the diesel in this. It says, indeed, you feel your engine restarting, even more so because it's with a diesel in a small car. But after a while, you get used to it and you get stellar miles per gallon. He's also driven automatic gearboxes, but he prefers the manual and doesn't understand why many people aren't able to drive with him.
Because we're American.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. He's referring to in Brian Cooley's video on the 328i. This car came with an idle stop function, so and it also had an automatic transmission. So you come up to the light, you put the brake down, hold it stopped, and the engine shuts off. And then as soon as you lift off the brake, the engine kicks in again, and this saves you gas every time you're waiting at a light for 5 minutes or whatever. And Cooley hated this function, and he was really happy to find the button that let you defeat that and turn the idle stop thing off. Because in the 328i, it was really obvious when the engine kicked on and off. It was a kind of a rougher system than I would expect from BMW.
Right.
But the 118D that our reader is talking about here, or our correspondent is talking about here, is I drove something similar in Europe. I drove the Mini Cooper Clubman. It was a gasoline version, but it had the idle stop function and a manual transmission, and it worked pretty well. Yeah,
we had remember we had the 123DN.
Yeah,
a couple of years ago, and that had the start stop function on it too. Manual transmission, 1 Series hatchback.
Yeah,
love that car.
Yeah, and it makes sense when if you lift the clutch, and then the engine kicks in again. Or I guess when you depress the clutch, the engine kicks in, which makes sense. And yeah, that gives you have a little more time because before you start, because you also have to put it in gear and everything like that, and so it gives the engine time to really kick in, as opposed to just lifting off the brake, and the engine has to. And you kind of want to go immediately, but the engine has a little time there built in.
Yeah, it's sort of like the mental timing of it. And I think in an automatic gearbox car, it's just you're just mentally used to, I'm off the brake, I'm on the gas, I'm on the gas, I'm on the brake, and that's sort of digital. So if you're on one, you're on the other, or you're not on either. But it's like an on-off switch sort of thing. Whereas in a manual transmission car, there's a little bit more timing, a lot more. Every limb's working in it, so it's everything. I mean, for the most part, takes a little bit longer to happen.
Yeah.
And in that sense, when you're stopped at a light, I mean, I think if you understand how a manual transmission works, you understand the engine's not actually connected to the drive wheels anymore when you're just sitting there. So the concept of the engine spinning and wasting fuel makes a little bit more sense there. I think it's easier to get over psychologically.
Yeah. The Porsche 911 we have in now also has the idle stop function. That has Porsche's dual clutch manual gearbox, the Porsche Doppelkupplung, which I said right.
PDK.
Yeah, I think there might be a few other syllables on the end of that, but I missed. But it works pretty smoothly. It definitely works more smoothly than the one in the BMW. And we'll see. Cooley's going to be in that car on this weekend, so we'll find out what he thinks of it next week.
Rant.
Yes. But I think idle stop systems are going to become more common, and people are going to have to get used to them. The one in the Buick LaCrosse we tested not too long ago, which has a mild hybrid system, was fine because they had that mild hybrid system.
It's basically cheating.
Yeah. Yeah, you could get moving right away, as soon as you hit the gas.
Yeah, and I think... as I guess things like using mild hybrid systems to cheat, I think Mazda is working on some sort of technology that sort of doesn't have to use a starter motor to get the engine going. I think I heard about this last year where they basically time the engine where one of the pistons stops at top dead center, so that when it's time to go, it just fires and you start moving again. You don't have to actually get that sort of like using an electric starter motor to get the engine going again.
Yeah, it makes sense.
As they start smoothing it out, I think people will just get used to it. But then, again, I think the simplest solution is to add cheater electric motors so that you don't really feel it. And as the price starts dropping on that electrification technology, if it actually ever does, I think we'll start seeing more of that.
Yeah, it's certainly nice. I've certainly gotten used to the idea, and I love the idea. When I started driving that Porsche, and I was at my first stoplight, and the engine cut out, I was like, good, because I've just gotten used to the notion that if you're sitting there not moving, wasting gas is annoying.
It is. I mean, that's perfectly good gas that you could be using for having fun with.
Yeah, yeah. You want that gas for when you're when you're pushing on the pedal.
Yeah. So, but I guess. But before we move on to the next email, I just kind of wanted to touch on his what Europeans seem to be more, I guess, less averse to the idea of a manual transmission versus in North America, less than 10% of new vehicles sold are manuals. Like, why do you think that is?
Oh, well, I think it's partly because the gas prices, for one thing. I think the U.S., we've had cheap gas for a long, long time, and so we could get away with inefficient torque converter automatic transmissions. And in Europe, gas is so precious that every little thing that would get you better mileage, they went for, and so it really drove the adoption of manuals in Europe. And so it's not so much that Europeans are more in tune with their cars or something like that. No, it's just that necessities of
I wonder also if it's high fuel costs, higher insurance costs, congestion charges, that sort of thing. Is it just more expensive to own a car, in a country like, for example, the UK? So maybe spending $1,200 extra bucks or pounds on an automatic transmission just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that would make sense. That's definitely part of the equation too, I would imagine. And the fact that we've had such an adoption, or such a widespread adoption of automatics here, means that there often isn't a price premium anymore for an automatic.
Right.
You don't pay an extra, certainly in the very low end car market, the very base $12,000 model of, like the Versa or something only comes with a manual. And then you go up a level and you can actually get the automatic. And I guess, we've had automatics so long that the price, in cars, in a higher range, 20,000 and above, it becomes pretty much, either the automatic is standard, you can't even get a manual.
Yeah. As is the case with the Jaguar that's down there.
Oh yeah, price is just built in. Yeah.
Seeing that little stupid gear selector knob is so annoying when blipping the throttle makes it sound so good. Like, you can't even just, sit at a light, look over at someone and give it that quick vlom vlom. Like, car is awesome, isn't it? You got to put it in neutral and then blip the throttle and then step on the brake and put it back into drive. And by then they're gone. But yeah, I think that is sort of interesting. A lot of people I know just can't even drive a manual. A lot of people I know can't drive automatics either, but that's a completely different story.
You mentioned that 10% figure, though. I think people that are into cars would be surprised at that. But yeah, only 10% of new cars in the U.S. are sold with manuals.
Yeah. So, sad day. Sad. I don't want to think about that anymore. We got another email comes in from Chris from California. He says, "Hi guys, I just purchased a new 2012 Tiguan with the 2.0 liter TSI turbo engine and have been doing a little reading into the various ECU upgrades from companies like APR and GIAC. And it says they claim to be able to remap timing, boost pressure, etc. to offer 60 horsepower and 90 foot-pound increases over the stock programming. My question are, do these seem like legitimate claims? How much would such upgrades affect reliability? Would this void my warranty? And if I were to go ahead and get the upgrade, should I wait until the break-in period's over and I have significant miles on the engine? Thank you guys, and I love all of the car tech content." And that's again Chris from California.
All right, VW Tiguan with a that's funny, doing a performance chip upgrade.
You want to. I hope that's the all-wheel drive model, because if you had the front-wheel drive model, you're just going to spin those skinny tires.
Yeah, I'm not. It's funny. I'm not sure why you would. Chip a Tiguan.
Why not? Here's the thing. I'm pretty sure Chris bought the Tiguan because he needed a small SUV, but now he wants to have a little bit of fun. And you can't really fault the guy for that. And what's interesting is I've actually just been helping a friend do a ton of research on a similar thing. He owns a Mazda Speed 3, and he's doing a lot of ECU upgrades for things trying to make his car more efficient and more powerful and whatnot. And so there are a lot of things that, well, for starters, when you're working with a turbo engine, a remap to tuning could easily add 60 horsepower, because a lot of times a vehicle like the Tiguan is tuned for efficiency. So it's tuned in such a way that, maybe it's, set up to get the best fuel economy, but with a couple of tweaks, you can get more horsepower out of a turbo engine pretty easily.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I know from the BMW side of things, non-turbocharged cars, you can get, it seems legitimate claims you can get maybe an extra 15 horsepower or so, 20 horsepower, but yeah, not like these numbers here, but a turbo could, make a huge difference.
Yeah, doing something like cranking up the boost pressure, it's almost logarithmic, the amount of power that you can add. The thing is that there are a lot of things that you want to think about before you do that. For starters, is that there's more to an engine than the engine itself. In the case of, I really hate to keep jumping back to the Mazda Speed 3, but in the case of the Mazda Speed 3, once you start ramping up power, once you start adding boost pressure, the engine has to add more fuel to accommodate the extra air that it's sucking in. It's cramming into the cylinder, and so usually what they start doing is they find that their fuel pump can't keep up with it, and you start running lean, and you get engine issues. So you want to make sure that or talk to other people who have done similar mods to their cars, and make sure that things like your fuel system, your intake, and the other sort of support systems that help the engine to get that air and fuel into the combustion chamber can keep up with the remapped programming. The other thing is, yes, you are definitely voiding your warranty if you get caught.
Yeah.
Doing something like using an aftermarket oil filter, you're protected under the law for that. But then once you start tinkering around with the computer, there's not really much protection for that. So if you get caught, if you blow your engine up and they find out that you've been messing with your ECU, you pretty much count your warranty as null and void.
Yeah, you don't get a new warranty based on that, or new engine based on that. Also, I got to mention too, on the same line is in California, you probably also can't renew your registration.
Yeah, if they find out that you've adjusted in getting your vehicle smog checked.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's an automatic visual fail.
Yeah.
And yeah, it creates all sorts of issues there.
Yeah,
I don't really.
You certainly
he's in California, so yeah.
Yeah, you certainly have to check if it'll pass smog in California. See what this company claims and see what other people said, because you definitely want to make sure your car can pass smog.
Right. So as far as waiting till the break-in period is over, I would recommend that before you do any mod, wait till the break-in period is over, because like the first thing you're going to want to do is floor it, and you don't want to be doing that in the first 6,000 miles before the rings have had a chance to set and the engine's sort of like good and broken in. So yeah, I mean, maybe not significant miles, but yeah, definitely before the break-in period's over, you're gonna want to hold off on that.
Yeah, it's usually about 500 miles, I think, most cars.
I'm a little more generous than that, but yeah, I've actually never owned a new car, so
yeah.
So I'm just pretty much going on with what my father told me.
Right. Yeah, and 60 horsepower and 90 foot-pounds of torque, that's a big boost. And if that engine really hasn't had time to get all its parts settled in, like you said, then yeah, that could be a big problem.
Right. But you don't want to wait too long, because once you get a high mileage vehicle, like once if you don't want to wait till you have like 120,000 miles on your engine before you start trying to up the boost pressure, because then then you've got all sorts of like possible points of failure that could be like worn out. But I mean, I think after your break-in period, you're kind of in a sweet spot for doing upgrades. Just understand that you want to make sure that the rest of your vehicle can keep up with the car. In the case of the Tiguan, I would say you're probably better buying new tires, stickier tires than the ones that come on it, because the bone stock TSI Tiguan that we tested last year spun tires away from every light without going particularly fast, and that's because it's got those kind of lower rolling resistant all-season tires, and if you want to actually have fun with it, you're going to want some summer tires. And I think that the power that Tiguan makes, you'll probably see a pretty big definitely if you're going to be adding 60 more horsepower, you're going to want to make sure that you can actually put that power to the road. But
yeah, so we got our next a listener comment here comes from Matt Bat, calls himself, and he says, on episode 45 of Roadside Assistance, Wayne, myself, went on and on about ugly car mounts for phones. Let's see. He says, when I needed a mount for my Samsung Moment, they didn't make any pretty mounts, so I built one. I bought a belt holster for my phone for $5, a Garmin windshield mount for $3 on eBay, and a tube of epoxy for $6 at Home Depot. I cut the clip off of the belt clip. I made the Garmin adapter flat and glued the two together. The only problem I had was that I attached the Garmin to the center of the phone. I made a second one that I attached near the top and made it easier mounting on the raked windshield of my '07 Mazda 6. So he's got some pictures here. Let me just see if I can bring the... here we go. Yeah, it actually looks like a pretty nice mount. It looks nice and professional here.
That's actually that's the Garmin mount.
Oh, okay.
Then in the next shot, he's got the belt clip where he sanded off the what looks like that nipple that you would use to connect to the clip. And then if you go down a little bit further, I don't see any pictures of the finished one. But I can see what he's doing there.
Yeah.
And how that would work.
Yeah, sort of DIY in a decent
I approve
mount.
of DIY.
Yeah.
I think it's actually pretty awesome when people figure out how to do things like that. I would like to see a picture of the finished product, but I don't see one in the Flickr gallery here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm again all for do it yourself. If you can't find a clip that does what you want it to do, yeah, make one. And I mean, what he spent. It looks like under $15.
Yeah, which is great because I know ProClip is a pretty popular brand for this kind of stuff, but their mounts cost, I don't know, $50 or so. Mm-hmm. And, I think they mount pretty good. Of course, those are mount into the dashboard, which you could probably also DIY too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you look at a lot of the ProClip thing, they're just precision built, bent metal in a lot of cases. And so what they're doing is saving you the trouble of taking your car apart, measuring where the bolts are, going like patterning out like metal, and then getting like a bender and doing all of that.
Yeah.
Saving you from having to crease your own aluminum for a mount, and that's what you pay for in that case, and it's worth the money, I think, actually. But if you do have a sort of do-it-yourself spirit, you can, again, like I think I said on the last show, pretty much anything you can buy in a store, odds are you could do it yourself if you just kind of want to do it.
Well, I like this idea too of taking a like this belt clip. It's just a mount which is designed for specific phones, and they have those all over the place. You can usually find them on a table on the sidewalk. Somebody's selling them.
Yeah.
And adapting those with epoxy will hold plastic pieces together.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add epoxy to my do everything toolkit there along zip ties, duct tape, and epoxy. I think you could rule the world with those.
One thing I got to say about the solution too is lots of times the mounts the pre-made mounts you find in stores have things you aren't necessarily going to use. Either maybe a power adapter or some kind of aux cable adapter or something like that. And so getting one with just the pieces you want on them, you might have to go to DIY, build it yourself.
Yeah, and then just go on. Like this guy, he went on eBay, just bought like a Garmin suction cup for $3,
which
really?
Is great. Yeah.
I wonder if that included shipping. It probably had to. I'm sure people are just giving those things away, or just to go into a thrift store and like you see something laying around. This actually has me wanting to go through my box of junk to see if there's anything that I could like take apart and maybe use for similar situations. Because with my my Thunderbolt, like I have an issue where no car mount that I've actually, and I only really use the ones that are laying around the office. I refuse to buy one because car tech editor. Yeah. But none of the ones that I have laying around the office like fit the phone right. They all either hold down the volume button when they grip the phone by the sides, or they're not deep enough to hang on to my phone with the extended battery. And I've got like a perfectly good belt clip sort of thingy in a drawer right now, and I'm thinking I might go home and do something similar this afternoon.
I sense your next how-to article.
I sense so. I think that's going to be maybe look for that coming up soon.
All right, let's move on to Brian from Connecticut, who sent us an email, and he applauses for our excellent show. Thank you.
Caps.
Thank you, Brian. And he's mentioned he asked our advice last year about a car stereo, and Antoine gave him some good advice there. And he says, now I'm looking for a used car. The problem is that I'm looking for 2 submodels, a 1996 to 2000 only Honda Civic DX or HX. I want something simple because I do my own maintenance, so that means timing belts, clutches, and all that. I also did not want a sunroof in fear of it leaking. Something reliable, simple, and nicer looking than my older car, which is a 91 Civic. And he says, I plan to keep this 91 Civic and one day restore it, but that's another day. What other used car sites are there? I tried theobviouscars.com, Craigslist.org, eBay, and local forums, but does anyone else have any ideas? So places to find used cars online, and he certainly named the big ones.
Yeah, those are actually the ones that usually pop into mind for me.
Yeah, and cars.com also, they get a lot of listings from like local newspapers and things like that too. So they pretty well cover the used car market. What's out there is they've got a pretty good line on that. There aren't really anything as big to compete with that or Craigslist or eBay Motors as well.
Right.
Yeah, eBay Motors is pretty comprehensive.
I think doesn't Edmunds have Edmunds.com has a good used car locator, but I don't know if they use someone else's or if they have their own sort of like search algorithm. I'm kind of going through it right now, and it looks they're pretty granular.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like on Edmunds.
Yeah, and they they also let you see what I guess Blue Book prices are, or what the prices should be, and, and you get to compare that to prices people are offering. So that can help you in finding a good value. But I think the thing is, if you're looking for a particular car like this, the DX or the HX, and lately probably people are holding onto their DXs because of the mileage is so good that with upper prices it might be hard to find one. But yeah, looking at these submodels that there might not be as many around, and people might be a little loath to give them up at this point. You just have to really play the waiting game.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if you can put like alerts in eBay Motors or something like that, but eventually one of them is going to crop up.
Yeah, you can. I think you can put alerts in eBay Motors for like, this is the car that I want. These are the years that I'm interested in, and this is the price I'm willing to pay. And when when something pops up, you can get alerted to that. But yeah, you put it perfectly there. It's kind of when you're looking for something specific. I think we kind of mentioned this in the first email that we read today. When you're looking for something specific, that like whether it's a used Explorer with the navigation package, you kind of got to expand your search, look nationwide, and just kind of wait for something to come available.
Yeah. And there are like used car dealers have networks, computerized networks of the cars that are available on their lots, and so they can trade back and forth. And cars.com and Edmunds.com, I think those tap into this similar networks, so they let us get a look at them. So yeah, there's really not much else out there really to find these cars. I mean, you could always if you see a DX or an HX driving around your neighborhood,
just walk up to the driver
and
say, I have $500.
Yeah. Make them an offer.
You have a car. Huh?
Yeah. Or look for one that's just sitting, rusting in a yard somewhere.
Don't look for one rusting in a yard. The rust is the worst thing that you want to see on a car you're about to buy, because for every square inch of rust that you see, there are 4 that you don't.
Yeah. And Brian here says he's from Connecticut too. So yeah, that's going to be, that's one of those states where cars do rust. Not like we get out here in California.
So I guess that's wraps up the emails that we got this week. If you've got any question or a comment that you would like to share with us via email, you can send it to cartech@cnet.com. You can also give us a call and leave us a voicemail at 866-401-CNET. That's 866-401-2638. And for the show notes for today's show and any previous episode of CarTech Live or CNET Roadside Assistance, you can find all of that over at cartech.cnet.com. And of course, you can follow all of us on Twitter. I'm Antgoo, ANTGOO. Wayne is Wayforn, WAY4NE. And Brian Cooley, who's not with us this week but should be joining us again soon, is Brian Cooley, one word. I guess we'll see you next week with more questions and comments.